two Catholic men tried to intervene at a satanic ritual in Kansas City.
Yeah, that actually, God bless those men. They're superheroes. I love them. But that should have actually been priests there first. And it's not really fair to ask a father of a family to do the types of things that we do in Red Rose Rescue. Obviously, there are millions of lay martyrs in history, but the first person that's supposed to fall to is the apostles. And this isn't just a stunt for me. 99% of the time that I'm at the abortion center, I'm doing sidewalk counseling, prayer, exorcism prayers. But in our attempts to save lives, to stop cold-blooded killers from approaching children, we do realize that when they call the police, we may, in fact, tell you what the number one tool could be for ending abortion in this country. You ready for this?
Yeah.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Joining us right now is Padre Peregrino, or Father Dave Nix. You might remember Father Dave because I think he was arrested twice for the Red Rose Rescue and was facing prison time. And it was kind of a big deal. And we talked a lot about the Biden administration's, crazy effort to put people in prison who are simply trying to stop the murder of babies. Father Dave Nix joins us this morning to talk about that. Father, thanks for your time and good morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Good morning, Mr. McClane. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the Red Rose Rescue. What was that like for you? Why did you do it? What is it like putting your freedom on the line, getting arrested? What was that whole experience like for you?
Yeah, so we've done Red Rose Rescue. It's been a sort of a generation two of Operation Rescue. Operation Rescue was the group of people in the 1980s who locked themselves to abortion centers. Clinton's Face Act changed that to that it became a felony. And so Red Rose Rescue is sort of a workaround where we're able to place ourselves inside abortion centers, beg the couples who are abortion-minded not to go through with it. And in this process, because we are inside, not outside, because we're doing the counseling on the inside, we realize that putting ourselves between the killer and the baby may, in fact, lead to arrest, which has happened twice. In my life, many other people have been arrested more often than I have. And so basically what happens in Red Rose Rescue is when we're arrested, we are charged with a misdemeanor. It's not a felony like the Face Act attempted to bring against us because there's no blocking of entrances, just petty trespassing. But in our attempts to save lives, to stop cold-blooded killers from approaching children, we do realize that when they call the police, we may, in fact, face some sentences. And so one of our arrests, my last one in 2019, kind of got lost in the court system in New Jersey. And it kind of ended up a big deal in the Catholic world. But honestly, the last 5 or 6 years, I was hoping the court system had just forgotten about us, but they didn't. So we had a trial in New Jersey just two weeks ago. They were threatening us with 30 days jail time, but instead I got 18 months probation. Technically, it's called a suspended sentence, meaning if I mess up in the slightest, they are throwing me in the clink for 30 days. So it's a 30-day suspended sentence under 18 months probation.
And so what about the whole Face Act violations that the Biden administration seemed to want to be very eager to go after? Were you at all concerned that you might spend 10 years in prison?
I was concerned about that. Our lawyer assured us it wouldn't happen because he's been working. He's an Italian, New Jersey guy who does pro bono work for Red Rose Rescue. And so he assured us that would not be the case. But with the spiritual attack in my life and the luck in my life, I was very much expecting things to go south in one way or the other. But it's a good point under the Biden administration, because when I was in Florida last week or 2 weeks ago, I got to meet a J6 political prisoner. And so you're absolutely right to connect Clinton's Face Act with the Biden administration because, there are still political prisoners in this country. It's almost like the CCP in the 1950s or even current CCP, that in this country that we love to call free, and in some sense still is free compared to other countries, there are still political prisoners. And when we place ourselves between a killer and a baby, I would actually consider that at least a very close cousin of being a political prisoner.
I have a good friend, Mark Houck. He he was raided and he faced the FACE Act violation. And, you know, I've known Mark since 2007. He's an amazing man. And I got to say, he's always been very inspiring as far as facing these types of things head on. And he was obviously very concerned about his family, though. Whereas you're a hermit, you're a priest, you have no wife, you have no children. Does that make it at all easier for you to be committed? Not that I don't think people like myself or Mark or other people should be committed. I believe they should be. But did that ever crossed your mind? Like, is it just easier for you to go and put your freedom on the line like that because you are celibate and single?
Exactly, Joe. And this is why Christ had his apostles be poor and chaste and obedient, is because those three promises are tied together. And it's not really fair to ask a father of a family to do the types of things that we do in Red Rose Rescue. Obviously, there are millions of lay martyrs in history, but the first person that's supposed to fall to is the apostles. And this is why Christ expected them to live, celibacy for St. John, continence for the other 11. And that's exactly right. It's, I wish I could sit here and say it makes it, oh, no, Joe, you're wrong. It doesn't make it any easier. My life's really hard. No, it really does. It really makes it easier to realize that I have spiritual children, and please God that there are lives I've saved physically as a single celibate monk, missionary, hermit, priest, all those things I guess I am, because Christ has programmed celibacy, continence, chastity to be spiritual children for the world. So you're exactly right that this is where I don't really encourage non-celibates to do Red Rose Rescue. They can if they want to, but if you look at who does it, it seems to be mostly single celibates, priests. We do have a couple older women who are extremely heroic mothers and grandmothers who've like adopted dozens of kids and everything. It's really unbelievable, the heroism of them. But I do think for our older ladies who are grandmothers who do Red Rose Rescue, they're sacrificing a lot more than me, because even though it would have stunk to not offer mass for the 30 days in jail, it's not like I'm leaving a family behind. And this is exactly why you're totally correct on someone like Mark Houck. Is, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration when he's on LifeSite News or your show or whatever talking about, how there's lasting effects. PTSD is a real thing, lasting effects to a family being raided by the FBI for, by the way, which was not even close to the violation of a FACE Act, even under the wicked Clinton description of it. Let's be honest. He didn't even come close to really violating that.
Yeah. I mean, he went through a lot. His family went through a lot. He's told me recently his kids are still dealing with that.
Yeah.
I can imagine there's a lot of Catholics, even pro-life they may be, but they think Red Rose Rescue is an extreme. What would you say to that, Father?
And I understand some of the criticism because, 99% of the time I'm at the abortion center. So this isn't just a stunt for me. 99% of the time that I'm at the abortion center, I'm doing sidewalk counseling, prayer, exorcism prayers outside of the actual place, right? And so I don't want bigger buffer zones because of a couple extremists. I totally get it. But when we really realize what's happening in there should be no political strategy compared to a life-saving strategy, right? I mean, Will Goodman, who I was arrested with, he compared it to this, that imagine if there's a fire, are some people called to lobby for more fireproof walls? Yes, but some people can't wait. They have to go in right then. Those people are called firefighters, right? And so the notion that everyone's called to just have the long game political lobbying strategy, those people who insist on that, they are certainly quite far from understanding the absolute imminence of what abortion is actually doing. That abortion is snuffing out the life of a child who will never exist again on Earth, right? That this is someone who God had a name for, a plan for. This child, God knew what he was going to offer this child. Obviously, we have free will, so it's not like everything's wound up in some type of form of predestination. But really, let's be honest, like God, this child's never going to exist again. So the people who say, well, that's too extreme, really, like the lives we saved that day, who's going to bring that child back except for someone who puts their life between a killer and the child? So I think there's a lot of different roles in the pro-life movement, But that's one of them. If we really, really, really believe, not just in our heads, but in our hearts, that child deserved a chance to live.
You know, and I've always loved that about the folks that have done Red Rose Rescue. I knew a gentleman here, Nick, close to me in Houston, Texas, who went to prison or jail many times for Red Rose Rescue. And he did it up until the bishop asked him to stop. And he said that was, in obedience, he decided to stop at that point. But I remember him telling me stories about it. And he would say, like, he'd be arrested and the police officer would be driving him to book him into the jail. And the police officer would say, I'm really, really inspirational what you did. You're trying to save those lives. If it were me, I'd let you go. And then he would say, well, then stop the car, open the door, take off my handcuffs. If you really feel like what we did was right, then stand next to me. I can imagine that puts police officers, and I've heard some Catholic police officers talk about this. It puts them in a real tough bind, because although they agree abortion is murder and evil and should be stopped, they have to enforce the law and arrest people like yourself. How do you feel about that conundrum?
Yeah, so Jesse Romero and Ruben Navid had me on to talk about this, and they both said they just wouldn't follow those orders. In fact, there's one Protestant gentleman who was a cop for Las Vegas. His name's escaping me right now. He was told at one of these rescues to arrest a bunch of people. Las Vegas cop, Chet is his name. Chet not only disobeyed the orders, he joined them, lost his job, and became a full-time rescuer.
Wow.
For the unborn. So, I mean, people say, well, I have a family to support. Well, so did he. Maybe he was approaching grandparent age, but he's a perfect example why, there's a lot of people in history who had to put doing the right thing ahead of their family's salary. I mean, hopefully people don't have to make that choice. I hope they, like we were saying earlier, this is why celibacy is programmed into the gift of apostolic courage. Hopefully that's not going to be the case, but sometimes it is. And by the way, I don't know who you're talking about in Houston. I'm sure he's done a lot more rescues than me, so I'm not criticizing him in this next thing, but whatever bishop told him to stand down, that is far outside the purview, the bandwidth of what a bishop can actually command for the lay people. And even if it weren't, I'm reminded of, how do you say his name? Blessed Franz Jahrgestatter. He was told by his bishop to just go join the SS with the Nazis. And, you have a family to keep alive. You're getting conscripted into the Nazis. Just do it and save your family. So obedience doesn't always get you to heaven. He disobeyed his bishop, failed to join the Nazis, got killed by them, and now he's beatified, right? So this idea that obedience is, no, we are called to be obedient, but not when it includes the command to refrain from saving lives. And Blessed Franz Jahrgestatter is a perfect example that even the church agrees with me on this.
Yeah. So do you think that the Red Rose Rescue is the best tool to bring an end to abortion, or do you think that Red Rose Rescue just plays a part in the overall strategy? How do you look at it, especially now that Trump's in office? He's seen as a very pro-life president. Of course, under his first term, we were able to overturn Roe v. Wade. I still struggle with Donald Trump, especially on IVF. I haven't seen a whole lot of pro-life activity under this current administration. How do you see all of that, and how do you see Red Rose Rescue? Where does it fall on the order of the greatest tools towards overcoming this evil in society?
I'm not sure Red Rose Rescue's top 5 tools. I'll tell you what the number one tool could be for ending abortion in this country. You ready for this?
Yeah.
The number one tool is if every priest preached for an entire year why married couples should get off contraception.
Ooh.
If we could, because see, here's the thing. After we got probation instead of jail, my compatriots, my companions were upset because they're just so extreme. I was kind of happy to get probation. And I looked at them, I said, you know what, you guys, and I meant this as both an insult and a compliment, mostly a compliment, because they're much more strong in the pro-life movement than me. I said, you guys are never going to be happy until abortion's ended. And abortion isn't going to end until we stop contraception in this country. And that's not going to happen until Jesus returns in glory. But I'll tell you what, if we could get, I would guess that 80% of the couples out there, especially in the Novus Ordo pews, not like at a TLM parish where you go, Joe, but I've seen the numbers. It's something like 80% of Catholic couples are on the pill.
Because you want more, and I want to give it to you. I'm rolling out a brand new membership program for the insiders of this channel. Join today. There's something for everyone. And because you could help me fund the next documentary film, the next book project, audio drama, audio narrations, and other projects that I have been dreaming to work on, but simply don't have the resources to accomplish. You and I together can do amazing things. You want more, and I want to give it to you.
So again, the pill, not talking the morning after pill, the regular oral contraceptive pill causes abortions, many more than surgicals. And most priests are tolerated in the Novus Ordo world if you preach against abortion 2 or 3 times a year. No one's going to have a problem with that. But if you preach faithfully against contraception, you're going to get removed from a Novus Ordo parish. And we are not going to end abortion until we get everyone off contraception. Because even Planned Parenthood admits surgical abortion is the safety net for failed contraception. Not to mention, again, the fact that most contraceptives are abortifacient. So because the number one population-wise, the number one denomination, quote-unquote denomination, you and I know Catholicism isn't a denomination, but just for purposes of the non-Catholic listeners out there, we are the number one percentage of all Christians out there as far as denominations. Not that we're over 50% of the people, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, if we could get Catholics off the pill, that would be the strongest move to ending abortion in this country. So who does this fall to? This falls to your average parish priest, not the hermits like me that are going out and getting arrested. That's how we stop abortion in this country.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when's the last time you heard a strong homily against contraception? It just is not a thing. They don't. It's like the third rail. Nobody wants to touch that because it's such a It's such a controversial issue, and they're afraid of upsetting the apple cart. But the reality, and it kind of ties into something else I wanted to talk to you about. It's a good segue, and that is you put out a video on your Padre Peregrino YouTube channel, and it was really about what I thought was sort of like this. Like we're told one thing, and it's really the opposite that's kind of true. We're told that, traditional Catholics are the radicals and the hard-hearted ones and the Pharisaical Catholics. But in reality, it's kind of the other way. And I don't mean that in any hard-hearted way. I kind of mean that in the sense of I personally find it easier on or off. The middle ground is so hard, right? Like having to figure out that middle ground can be very difficult. The nuance sometimes is hard. So contraception is bad. Why is it bad? Because it upsets the natural processes for procreation and bonding between spouses. It has chemical, physical, psychological, emotional harm that it can do to not only to the woman but to the male. So there's all these reasons. So the church says it's wrong. We shouldn't do it. Okay, that's
and again. Remember, all those reasons are behind the fact it's abortifacient. Those are all correct.
Yeah,
but those are still behind the abortifacient. Yeah.
But to me, it's like, okay, the church says it. Great, it's easier. I'll just follow that. But there's so many. There's so many today that look for that rationalization. They're against it up until it becomes personal. Like, oh yeah, the church says homosexuality is a sin. And I believe that up until my oldest child came out of the closet. Now all of a sudden there's a rational excuse to reject church teaching.
That's right.
And really it's the opposite. Like that becomes the Pharisaical Christianity. Isn't that the case?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the video you're referring to, this is where I was talking about how, many people call traditionalists the Pharisees because they think we're hardcore or whatever else. But let's take a step out and say, did Jesus Christ dying on the cross, was this to make our lives harder or easier? And this is where John 3:17, Jesus said, I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. Is Christ primarily our savior? Does following the gospel, does that just help us to sneak into heaven by the skin of our teeth while we live a miserable life? Or does the true gospel actually free us even on earth to follow Christ? And so what I noticed about if you read the New Testament, any of the four Gospels, it's actually the Pharisees who are so legalistic. They're always coming up with loopholes why not to follow God's law. Well, who does that sound like today? The traditionalists or the modernists? Really?
Yeah.
Who is coming up with the loopholes to not follow God's law? So, okay, you and I are talking about contraception. Let's say, hypothetically, some Novus Ordo woman has a big conversion, makes her way to a Fraternity of St. Peter parish, and no. Let's say she actually goes to like a conservative Novus Ordo priest, and she's crying, and she says, "I just realized the pills in abortifacient, and and that names all these things. I didn't know." Probably your average Novus Ordo priest, whether conservative or liberal, is going to say to her, "Then there was no mortal sin. You didn't know." Okay, I don't have a big problem with that theology. Maybe she didn't know. I have a little problem with it since God's law is written on all of our hearts. It says in Romans 1. So you don't have to have the perfect priest to know the right thing to do. But let's just pretend for a minute that priest is correct. You said, "Oh, there was no mortal sin because you didn't know." Okay. Does that mean she didn't live her whole life without an increased chance of strokes from the pill, pulmonary
Right.
embolisms from the pill, numerous children
Yes.
that died from the abortifacient effects of the pill? That God had a plan for 5 more kids. She's got 2 kids on the planet, and God had a plan for 5 more to be running around and getting married. So in other words, not following Christ and the traditional magisterium actually has real effects, even if you can come up with all these reasons why God shouldn't throw me into hell. Maybe those reasons are real, but what is God really into? Is he out there to throw you into hell, or is he out there to save you? And I would actually propose the traditional view of Catholicism is Jesus established Catholicism to save you, not to make your life more miserable so you can just come up with excuses and loopholes why not to follow the traditional magisterium. And anyway, I've rambled too long, but you can kind of see where I'm showing that it's just ironic that we're the one that are called legalists when we traditional Catholics are precisely the only ones not looking for loopholes to get out of the gospel.
I want to go back to something. We're coming up on the time here, but I want to go back to something that we talked about a minute ago, and that was that why it's easier for you because you're a single celibate hermit priest versus a married man. But still, what'd you say? What is the responsibility of Catholic men? Just the other day, 2 Catholic men, I assume one of them, I know, is married. The other one I assume is probably married. Tried to intervene at a satanic ritual in Kansas City.
Oh, yeah.
One ripped the book out of his hand. The other one tried to rescue the host that was being desecrated. Don't know if it was consecrated or not. But either way, what's the level of responsibility that you think lay Catholic men have to right injustice and wrong in society?
Yeah, that actually, God bless those men. They're superheroes. I love them. But that should have actually been priests there first. And this is the thing is, I think, you've had Rachel on your show before, and this is where we really need the reform of the priesthood at this point, that we need straight men, courageous men, orthodox men leading the charge. Because if the priesthood was filled with straight orthodox men, you can be sure some of them, not all of them, some of them would have been at those satanic rallies in Kansas. And who's the first guardian of the Eucharist? Who's the first person? There's a lot of mainstream Catholics that applaud my pro-life work, but they don't understand. They're mad at me when I criticize Vatican II or something like that. And I get it. Catholics are wired for obedience. They don't understand that, even John the 23rd and Paul VI said it's a pastoral council, meaning it didn't have the dogmatic weight of, say, Trent. That's a totally different topic. But point is, my calling for church reform is actually more central to my calling than even the pro-life stuff, because what are we saving people for? We're saving them, to go to a Novus Ordo parish where they're just going to hear that nobody goes to hell and you're fine whatever you do? No,
Right.
We have to save souls, and that, the fish stinks from the head down. Until we reform the priesthood and actually return us to what I always say on my podcast is called apostolic Catholicism, all the pro-life efforts are going to be worth absolutely nothing. So that was kind of a roundabout way of saying those men are heroes, but that should have been priests there. And we're not going to have priests. And by the way, 99% of the time those hosts are stolen, they are stolen from Novus Ordo parishes because it's a lot easier to steal from your hand. So this is also tied back to the fact why we need to return to the traditional Latin Mass. Can the host be stolen at a TLM? Yes, but it's exponentially more difficult.
Yeah, it sure is. I think that's going to be time for us, Father Dave Nix. So grateful for your time today. Thanks for having a ride with us, taking a ride with us this morning, and sharing your own experiences in the Red Road Rescue. We are definitely very grateful for your courage, your generosity, in trying to save those lives, even if the moms didn't know to the full extent that your heart was poured into helping them realize what the choice is. I'm post-abortive myself. I've been to that clinic. I know what it means. I've had to make that confession, so I personally am very grateful for your courageous gift of life, Father. So thank you very much.
God be praised for your conversion. Thanks for standing up for life after a big conversion. Yeah.
We'd love to have you back soon, Father. God bless you.
I'd love to do it. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.